and I'm put faith in him.
By these people who have created the biggest rift in my life, I'm not doing that, okay?
Sink in. It's just something that is just eating at me. I'm so worried about it.
You won't believe the tea we're spilling today. From secret breakups to shocking lies, this is unreal tea. Hit subscribe before the drama starts. Welcome everyone. It was the sort of moment that reality television rarely gets, raw and uncut, and burdened with a silence that uttered more than words ever would. Aurora Brown, the shy, obedient daughter who never craved the limelight, moved past the cameras as if they did not exist. No gesture of greeting, no look over the shoulder. Her footsteps were heavy, measured, and those of someone who had walked away forever. Behind her, Robyn was on the floor, literally, crumpled in a corner, clutching one of Aurora's sweaters like it was the only thing tethering her to reality. Sobs ripped through her, the kind that bend a person in half. This wasn't the composed peacemaker fans knew. This was a mother unraveling in real time. And where was Kody? Not with his hand on his daughter's shoulder. Not with a word of reassurance to his wife. He wasn't present. That's when you see, this wasn't another cringe Sister Wives moment. This was the split. The irreversible one. For years, as a fan like me, I had witnessed the red flags, favoritism, resentment, muffled betrayals, promises dangled and then dropped. But this was different. Aurora's quiet departure wasn't just a daughter leaving a room. It was a crack in the family foundation we've been seeing splinter since Robyn first showed up. If you think this was sudden, you're mistaken. The seeds were sown seasons ago, hidden beneath insincere smiles, holiday meals, and Kody's big speeches about being one. And when they finally blossomed, they didn't just break the Browns, they revealed everything we thought we knew about them to be a lie. Before we dissect the entire story, the land transactions, the favoritism, the public silence, I want you to ask yourself, when does a family cease to be a family? Because for the Browns, the answer arrived gradually, then all at once. The walkout, it was the sort of scene where you lose track of breath. The kind that doesn't require music, voiceover, or even language to be a punch to the gut. Aurora Brown, who had once been the quiet daughter who faded into the background, pushed beyond the cameras without looking. No wave. No farewell. Only a face that was impossible to read and a determined, heavy gait that seemed to reverberate through the hallway. Behind her, Robyn lay on the floor. Not sitting, falling. Her body curled around one of Aurora's sweaters. Like it was the last lifeline she had left. Her sobs weren't graceful. They were jagged, raw, shaking her from the inside out. We'd seen Robyn emotional before, she had a reputation for tears, but this was different. This was a mother unraveling. And Kody? Nowhere. Not a hand on his daughter's shoulder. Not a word of reassurance to his wife. Just silence. The kind of silence that leaves you knowing that this wasn't something that could be resolved by a family sit down or a we're going to work it out speech. This was it. For more than a decade, we'd been sold an image, a united front, a plural marriage success story that somehow weathered jealousy, financial strain, and the everyday chaos of a massive blended family. But the truth? That image had been cracking for years. You might catch it if you paid attention closely enough. A father's lopsided attention, wives stepping away into their own corners, ambitions constructed on land that was left bare and untended. And Aurora's walkout wasn't an accident. It wasn't unexpected. It was the result of years of silent cracks, allowed to extend until the entire foundation shattered. You could find fans like me who had noticed the warning signs. A slight adjustment to screen time. The manner in which Kody's calendar appeared to revolve around Robyn's children. The emotional distance building between him and the kids from his previous marriages. The land, heralded as the great equalizer but gradually becoming a negotiable asset, something offered but never given. And yet somehow the Browns had managed to keep the machine purring. Group meals. Family gatherings. Staged on-camera scenes that covered up the gaps. Up until now. Aurora's quiet departure didn't just pull back the curtain, it brought it crashing down. And what we witnessed wasn't mere tension. It wasn't another fight. It was the most apparent indication yet that the Brown family we all thought we knew was no longer. If you think this came out of nowhere, you haven't been paying attention. The seeds of today were sown years past, in love affairs that cost someone else something, in dreams that never really got off the ground until the first brick was never laid, in talks where words were spoken, but not really heard. And to see how it all came to pass, to really look at why Aurora left that day, we need to turn back. Back to when cracks first began to appear. The seeds of collapse, to make sense of the silence in that hallway, the fact that Aurora went by her mother's tears without glancing back, you have to go back. Not a few months. Not a season. Years. At the surface level, the Browns had always been a picture of togetherness. That was Kody's refrain, his mantra: 4 wives, 1 family, all equal. In interviews, he described their polygamous marriage as a smoothly running machine of equality and love. But the reality? The imbalance began to creep in not long after. Robyn became a part of things. Her arrival was presented like a fairy tale. A new love story. The missing piece to their family puzzle. Even how the show framed her initial scenes, warm light, love music, indicated, this was not another wife. This was the wife. Christine, Janelle, and Mary? They attempted. They smiled for the camera. They embraced her as one of their own. But they sensed the dynamic even before the viewing public did. Kody's time, his energy, his presence, started to shift towards Robyn and her kids. Not only on holidays. Daily. Conversation among the group that used to involve everyone now felt like a formality, like the play of oneness had to be recited out loud to maintain the illusion. When Christine attempted to share about feeling invisible, the words fell apart in the air. Janelle's no-nonsense, down-to-earth guidance was rebuffed. If it didn't coincide with Kody's, and more, Robyn's, vision. And Mary? Post-catfishing debacle, she was kept at arm's length. Her attempts to rejoin weren't spurned. They were just ignored. Which, in a way, stung worse. Then there was Coyote Pass. Kody's sweeping, bring everyone together dream. Each wife had her own house on common property, near enough for dinner with the family, but far enough to have some space. A new beginning. An assurance that, in spite of tensions, the Browns would have a future together. It sounded ideal. On paper. But year by year, that vision changed, not in development, but in intention. Delays accumulated. Plans were altered. Deadlines vanished. And always, the message was the same: we just need more time. Meanwhile, nothing progressed. The land was less and less a joint vision and more of a talking point, a prop that Kody could whip out when harmony was on the line. Christine, who stood on her vacant lot, voice breaking as she confessed she couldn't envision living there anymore. Janelle, standing there with the calculator, attempting to decipher the finances, only to be greeted with another halt in the plan. Mary, clinging to the hope, biding her time for a future that she must have known with all her heart was never going to come. And in the midst of it? Robyn's household remained constant. Isolated. Protected from the storms that battered all the others. By the time the wives began to step back, the writing was on the wall. The Coyote Pass dream wasn't lagging, it was decaying. And the loyalty that held the family together was quietly, steadily unraveling. The question wasn't whether collapse would occur. It was when. Coyote Pass, promise or prison? From the very beginning, when Kody first stepped onto that desert strip of property, Coyote Pass was marketed as the solution. The panacea for every fight, every jealousy, every unspoken bitterness. Each wife would have her own house. Apart, but close enough for Sunday gatherings and common holidays. The children could play between homes. The grandkids would be a short walk from all who cared for them. It wasn't land, it was hope. At least, at first. When Christine first visited her assigned lot, she smiled for the cameras, but what her eyes conveyed was different. She conceded afterwards she couldn't imagine herself there. Not in the ground. Not in a home that wasn't built yet. Not when her marriage to Kody already felt hollow. Janelle attacked it the way she did everything else, sensibly. She asked the tough questions: how much will this cost? How will we pay for it? When do we start breaking ground? But whenever she insisted on clearness, she was confronted with more time, more delays, more excuses. And Mary? She held on to the dream in silence, even as years went by and not a single foundation was poured. The ground became a metaphor, not of what might be, but of what was not occurring. She waited. Too long. In the meantime, the cameras continued to come back to the grand overhead. Shots of Coyote Pass, the undeveloped, untouched land stretching beneath a broad Arizona horizon. It was intended to be uplifting. For too many observers, it instead served as a visual reminder that cohesion was now simply a talking point. The dream slowed. Then it froze. Then it darkened. Coyote Pass no longer felt like a blessing. It felt like a trap. A bargaining tool Kody could use, a project that only he could open if the family would just follow orders. For the other wives, it was a nagging, perpetual question: were they waiting for their future, or stuck in a promise that never had to be fulfilled? When Christine finally did make her decision regarding her slice of that property, it wasn't money. It was escape. And what she did next would spark one of the most symbolic of the collapse's very moments. The breaking points, the day Christine made her move, it did not come with fireworks. No screaming match. No cameras snapping her in mid-tier. It came with a signature.in writing: it was a sale for $10, her stake in Coyote Pass, given over to Kody and Robyn. $10 for a piece of land that had been built up for years as the family's collective future. But anyone who knew Christine recognized it wasn't about the dollar. It was a statement. A cold, hard cutting of the rope holding her to Kody's vision and his domination. When Kody discovered, the anger in his eyes said more than his words could ever possibly say. "She's making a mistake," he hissed in a subsequent confessional, his jaw clenched. But in fact, he'd already lost her. Long before that signature, she'd existed in another emotional realm, one where his assurances no longer counted. Janelle's breaking point arrived in another way. It wasn't an over-the-top gesture. It was the glacial pace of reason colliding with unyielding obstacles. She'd worked the math, time and again, and the figures never balanced. Each discussion of forward movement on Coyote Pass ended up looping back to the same sticking points, ones that magically vanished whenever it was for Robyn's sake. Privately, Janelle confessed what she never wanted to utter: "If I wait, I will lose everything I've worked for." And just like that, waiting was no longer a choice. Then Mary. Her allegiance had been challenged more than any of them. Public shame. After the catfishing. Years of emotional estrangement from Kody. The silent pain of being on the outside of her own marriage. She waited for it to improve, assuming that if she just stuck it out, the family would be salvaged. But the salvage never occurred. And in one of the most heartbreaking moments of her sister wives' experience, she finally uttered the words, "Kody doesn't view us as married." For Christine, it was a sale. For Janelle, a choice. For Mary, a reality she could no longer ignore. 3 different roads. One common reality. And as each of the wives moved away, Kody's world grew smaller, until only Robyn remained standing alongside of him. But even that partnership, strong though it had seemed, was soon to be tried in ways they could hardly have predicted. Aurora fades from the frame. It did not occur overnight. Aurora did not shut the door on the cameras as Christine had shut it on Coyote Pass. She just faded. At first, just slowly. A missed family dinner here. A euphemistic excuse there. She was still present, technically. You could spot her in the distance of a scene, hair back, arms crossed, eyes elsewhere. Then the gaps between her appearances became wider. When she did appear, she felt ethereal. As if she stood in the room but was already on her way out the door. Fans paid attention. Social media erupted with speculation. Some attributed it to typical teenage independence. Others gossip-mongered about a split, not only between her and Kody, but between Aurora and the concept of the family in general. Within the Brown household, the tension was more difficult to dismiss. Robyn struggled to keep her daughter invested, begging that things could still be fixed. Kody, on the other hand, appeared almost detached, as though evading the truth would make it not exist. But Aurora wasn't just avoiding family dinners and camera crews. She was avoiding the story. The sister wives story. By the time the season's mid-finale had aired, keen-eyed viewers noticed something terrifying. Aurora wasn't just missing from group scenes, she'd been edited out. Shots cropped tighter. Conversations cut short. A family photo suddenly swapped out on the wall. As if she had been quietly erased before she even left. Robyn's anxiety turned panic. Her closed-door conversations with Aurora became longer, more tearful. But Aurora's responses grew more curt. And then one day there were no responses at all. The walkout was unavoidable by that point. We simply did not know when, or how bad it would be for the last 2 individuals who still held up the dream. The day of the walkout, the day came quietly, almost innocently. No lights ahead warning us. No sensational build-up on camera. Only a feeling that something in the atmosphere had changed. Aurora walked past cameras as if they did not exist. Her gait was slow, deliberate, last. Gone was that polite, eager-to-please girl from previous seasons. In her stead was someone who had made a decision to leave behind a family that had long ceased to be whole. Behind her, Robyn fell to the ground. The cameras recorded each second, Robyn holding Aurora's sweater tight against her chest, shaking, gasping, a broken mother in real time. Her tears weren't for the audience. They were raw, uncut sorrow, for a daughter who had quietly left not only the room, but the story itself. And Kody? Not around. When he did appear, his response was defensive. Not consoling. Doors shut. Shouts were heard. He deflected blame elsewhere, blaming Robyn for not doing what needed to be done, refusing to face the fact that his decisions had helped to cause this break. For audience members, it was an epiphany. This wasn't tension, argument, or reality. TV melodrama. This was a family on the verge of irreparable breakdown, broadcast live on television. The silence within the home was oppressive. No apologies. No justifications. Only missing persons and the residual specter of what had been a harmonious home. The Browns' public image, painstakingly managed for more than a decade, shattered utterly. Vacant homes, empty lots, missing kids. The facade of harmony blown apart, the truth revealed, preferential treatment, neglect, and years of unvoiced anger had finally come home to haunt them. Robyn attempted to mend what was left, begging, desperate, but too late. Aurora's silence had already screamed louder than words ever had. Empty land, empty houses, Coyote Pass. What was once a beaming promise, now a desolate reminder. The bird's eye views captured it all perfectly: vacant lots, desolate streets, incomplete foundations, and shut blinds looking back at the sky. The hope of a completed family had become a ghost town. The cul-de-sac, which was once full of laughter and commotion, was now filled with silence. Driveways were vacant. The rooms that once filled with Sunday dinners, holiday meals, and family milestones were now mere remnants of what might have been. Aurora's last walkout, Robyn's frantic crying, and Kody's defensiveness left the family in shambles. Christine, Janelle, and Mary had all parted ways in their own respects. All that was left was Kody and Robyn, the surviving pair in a family once constructed of common dreams and equal partnerships. But even that couple wasn't immune from fissures. Robyn's energy, once consistent, now reflected exhaustion, uncertainty, and the knowledge that she couldn't bear the illusion of family by herself. Kody, despite his presence with Robyn, was more interested in defending old decisions than forging a future. For their fans, it was obvious, the Browns weren't only falling apart. The scales of love, attention, and respect had been lost for years. The breakup had come gradually, inexorably, and now irreversibly. The deserted ground, the empty houses, and the lack of kids all said one thing: a plural marriage that seemed unbreakable had dissolved quietly, agonizingly. And the question that hung in the mind of every viewer remained: was it favoritism on Kody's part towards Robyn and her kids? The underlying bitterness between the wives? Or the refusal to adjust when the family started to break? The Browns had weathered scandal, betrayal, and public judging. But nothing can weather the pressure of years of imbalance and quiet. The last shot remained after the cameras went off: vacant homes, undeveloped land, and the silent disappearance of a daughter, who had simply decided to turn her back on it all. The family that the audience had watched for more than a decade was gone. And maybe, finally, reality caught up with the soap opera they'd been watching all this time. The ripple effect, Aurora's rebellion, reverberated across the house, more than anyone could have ever imagined. Her removal wasn't simply a vacant space in the room, it was a vacuum, a silence that emphasized every fault, every tension that had been quietly mounting for years. Robyn struggled to keep control, but the cracks were too hard to conceal. Talk that had been easy once now had deliberate pauses, guarded language, and an underlying tension of fear. Each word hung in the air like a potential detonator, and the atmosphere was heavy with unresolved complaints. The other wives, meanwhile, had withdrawn from the public eye. Christine was clear and resolute: her sale of her Coyote Pass lot wasn't just a financial decision, it was a statement. Janelle, once the voice of reason, had grown distant, her patience worn thin. And Mary's quiet withdrawal left rooms she once filled with warmth and humor eerily empty. Even among those still in the house, the emotional weight was unbearable. Small disputes now erupted into hours-long arguments. Minor inconveniences were symbolic of years of discrimination and neglect. The ripple effect of Aurora's departure could be seen in all areas: a dinner table where laughter ceased to exist, hallways where footsteps were heard alone, living rooms where the silence was the loudest sound. Viewers of the episode saw it right away. Social media was abuzz with speculations. Clips of Aurora absent from gatherings, Robyn in tears over empty rooms, and Kody's defensive posturing were dissected endlessly. The carefully constructed narrative that had been unfolding for more than a decade was unspooling in front of them. The message was obvious: the Browns were no longer simply growing apart, they were unspooling. Each silence, each withdrawn absence, each unspoken complaint radiated outward like fissures in glass, ready to fracture the whole family. The children caught in the crossfire, Aurora's departure was only the start. As adults bickered, retreated, and struggled to manage their broken relationships, the kids were left to decipher a world that no longer had order. They weren't mere bystanders, but active participants in a household whose rhythm had been disrupted. School parties became arenas of conflict. Birthdays that used to be celebrations of unity now resembled competitions for attention. Even brief visits between the siblings came with an undertone of tension, as unexpressed grievances crept into each encounter. Kody's lopsided attention only worsened the situation. With Robyn's kids, he was there, involved, and waiting. With other wives' children, his availability was spotty, his focus fleeting. The dichotomy was stark, evident even to those watching in the comfort of their homes. It confused some children, angered others, and made them all sharply aware of where they stood in the attention hierarchy. Times that were meant to be happy were made sorrowful. A brother peered into the vacant driveway, anticipating voices that never arrived. A holiday meal included laughter, but a child silently dabbled at their plate, made invisible among the reverberations of what the family once was. Aurora's departure became the symbol, a silent message to her siblings that the life they had was irretrievably broken. Discussions at the table were no longer merely about what to eat or how to spend holidays. They were test runs in seeing who was important, who had power, and who could be relied upon to keep them safe. Fans saw it all. Footage of kids sitting apart, lingering glances, and moments of tacit tension were shared as viral talking points. Social media chatter wasn't rumor-mongering, it was a mirror of the emotional reality on screen. The kids were in the middle of the crossfire, helpless but deeply impacted. It was obvious, the harm wasn't only emotional. It was structural. The foundation of the family, once strengthened by shared moments and trust, had started to break down under the pressure of favoritism, absence, and broken loyalty. Robyn's burden. Robyn was always the glue that held things together, the peacekeeper, the one who attempted to keep all the threads and pieces intact. But after Aurora's departure, the burden turned suffocating. The cameras saw her attempts at keeping calm, but at home, the tension was unbearable. She coordinated schedules, arbitrated disagreements, and protected her children from the widening cracks, all while attempting to keep Kody involved with the remainder of the family. Every smile she provided to the cameras was like a mask, one which concealed weariness, worry, and an insidious feeling of loneliness. The emotional labor she performed was heavy. Disagreements with Kody and the other wives, the constant scrutiny by viewers, and the unspoken absence of Aurora all took their toll. Each time she jumped into a situation, she eroded her own emotional banks. Robyn's confessionals were rawer and rawer. No longer guarded, no longer the diplomatic voice fans were used to. She confessed, in tears and whispers, that she didn't know how much longer she was able to hold the family intact. "I can't do this by myself anymore, and maybe never could," she admitted, voice breaking. Even mild disagreements became emotional. Snowstorms. A harmless inquiry regarding dinner would escalate into arguments regarding fairness, favoritism, and unresolved grievances. Each conversation, each encounter, required more of Robyn than she could ever give on a regular basis. But she kept at it. For her children. For the sake of what the family used to be. For the hope, at least, that somehow or another, things could be whole again. But every new day proved the bitter reality. The fractures were too wide, the cracks too deep, and the burden of responsibility too heavy for any one person to bear. It was beyond doubt in the end. Robyn was brave, but even the bravest stabilizer has limits. And the family's collapse was already overtaking her capacity to keep it together. Kody's blind spot. Kody thought for years that he was the family anchor, the stable hand that steered a plural family through troubles, scandals, and public attention. But the on-screen reality told a different tale, one of preferential treatment, distance, and lost chances at healing. Kody's focus had never been equal, but the imbalance was glaringly apparent after Aurora left. With Robyn and the children, he was supportive, present, and patient. With the others, his participation was haphazard at best, remote at worst. The disparity wasn't subtle, it was stark, and observers caught on right away. But Kody appeared nearly oblivious to the effect of his decisions. He saw the cracks as outside issues, miscommunication, misunderstandings, and failures on the part of his wives to see things his way. Seldom did he pause to consider his own involvement in the breakdown. Private confession times revealed the discordance between appearance and truth. He professed to love, loyalty, and unity as though the mere speaking of these virtues would revive them. But love, as the series had been demystifying season by season, was about action, fidelity, and focus, areas where his had been sporadic. Arguments that might have been chances at reconciliation became finger-pointing. Decisions regarding the future of the family, such as Coyote Pass, became weapons of control, not collaboration. Even lesser gestures, such as showing up for milestones of other wives' children, were tainted by inconsistency, creating emotional wounds that no apology could undo. Fans and critics alike began to realize the agonizing reality. Kody wasn't wicked, but he couldn't, or wouldn't, perceive the effect of his favoritism. His blind spot wasn't individual, it was systemic, a defect that had insidiously undermined the pillars of the family for years. The story had been clear. Kody's intentions, however sincere, could not make up for his lack of presence where it was needed most. The family's breakdown had been inevitable for a long time, and it was largely the result of his failure to fully see the cracks that surrounded him. The public eye, the Brown's tale had always unfolded in the bright lights of cameras, but since Aurora's departure, the glare had intensified. Viewers picked apart each frame, each interaction, and each silence. Social media was a magnifying glass, turning microscopic cracks that had been years in the making into gaping, inarguable fractures. Every vacant seat, every missed milestone, every awkward stare was scrutinized and argued over. Montages of Robyn's meltdown, Kody's defensiveness, and Aurora's absence were shown repeatedly. The viewers weren't simply viewing reality TV anymore, they were watching a family disintegrate in real time. Media attention swelled. Entertainment media reported on the departures, the land conflicts, and the psychological strain on the remaining family members. Headlines speculated on favoritism, abandonment, and promises broken. The highly manufactured image the Browns had cultivated for more than a decade started to unravel. Even the family members' own social media updates were subjects of critique. Smiling photos were picked apart for signs of tension. Words of support were read as defensive strategies. Every move to play a public role came across as performative, empty, and increasingly inconsequential. The children themselves became unwilling actors in this public drama. Fans picked up on the small changes in behavior, withdrawn faces, coerced smiles, and times when they appeared to retreat from the camera lens. Social media arguments tended to mirror actual feeling occurring off-camera, with the audience thoroughly identifying with children placed in the middle. The public gaze, which once was used for fame and control over narrative, now served as an insistent mirror. There was no concealment of the cracks. No cut could remove the visible lack of togetherness, the skewed attention of a father, or the emotional work assumed by Robyn. The bottom line was stark: the Browns' private failure was now a public spectacle. The world wasn't just watching, it was judging, dissecting, and witnessing a family in slow-motion collapse. This family's drama is far from over, so smash like if you're #TeamWives, subscribe for the next explosive update, and drop a comment below. Who do you think will win? Stay shady, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next scandal. Kiss mark. Behind TLC Sister Wives out.